Yo, what's good everyone? Today I'm going to be taking a first look here at this Week 9 NFL DraftKings main slate. Let's dive right into it. And like I always do here in these videos, I'm going to go position by position, highlighting the plays that are sticking out to me here early in the week. And then we'll wrap up this video by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. With that being said, let's dive into the quarterbacks here. And I got two cash game quarterbacks sticking out to me and then a handful of tournament quarterbacks. I think we can spend up for Jalen Hurts this week when it comes to our cash lineup. $7,800 is expensive, but if I'm shooting for 3x value, that's just shy of 24 DraftKings points. He can absolutely get there. You can see coming out of the bye here, he's hit 21, 22, and 35 DraftKings points, close to double-digit rushing attempts in each one of those games, and has now scored 5 rushing touchdowns in his last 3 games. Plus, the passing matchup this week against that Jags secondary couldn't be better. So I like him at $7,800 here. As far as tournament quarterbacks go, I really like Josh Allen and the stacking pieces that we can pair him with against Miami. I also really like Joe Burrow here this week as well. I know he hasn't been fantastic. He did have that one game where he had 37 DraftKings points, but outside of that, he's been mediocre at best when it comes to fantasy scoring. But again, I really do like this matchup here against the Raiders. Think he's going to be viable in tournaments, and T. Higgins should be back this week as well. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, I do like this game here between the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys. Playing indoors, definitely some shootout potential in this game. Neither defense is super great. I think we can stack up either side of this game, but my preferred route is to go with the Atlanta side here. Kirk has been great here in his last 2 games against the Buccaneers. You can see through for 4 touchdowns in both of those games, 28 and 38 DraftKings points. And really, if you just watch him play, he's getting more confident week in, week out, and building chemistry with his pass catcher. So again, I do think we'll be able to stack up either side, but I prefer the Atlanta side there. I think we're going to be able to play Matthew Stafford here, maybe even in cash lineups, being that both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are back. 25 DraftKings points last week against Minnesota, threw the ball 34 times, close to 300 passing yards, almost got that 3-point bonus, 4 touchdowns in that game. Got a divisional game here against Seattle, so at $5,700, I think he could be cash game viable, but definitely like him in tournaments too. And then the one other cash game quarterback that stuck out to me if we want to spend down this week, yes, Jameis Winston put up 27.5 DraftKings points last week, threw the ball 41 times, 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. At $5,400, we essentially need 16 DraftKings points, and I think he can get us there. Now, moving on to the running backs here, and this is one of those weeks where the high-priced running backs look really good. Honestly, I'm looking at James Cook and above right now and going, yeah, there's a case to be made to play any one of these guys, but of those running backs there with the 7K and above, my favorite 3 are Saquon Barkley, Kyren Williams, and Alvin Kamara, and AK is my favorite play here early in the week. Such a good spot here against this Carolina defense. We know the rushing attempts are going to be there. We know he's going to be involved in the passing game, and it sounds like Derek Carr is expected to be back this week, so that's an entire boost to this Saints offense. So again, high-priced running backs look really good here this week, but let's scroll down into the 6K range as well because there's a couple sticking out to me here. First being Devon Achane. Anytime Tua is in the lineup, he is performing well. You can see he's now had 7, and 8 targets with Tua in the lineup, hitting 23, 29.5, and 26.7 DraftKings points. He's too cheap in my opinion here at 6.7K, and that Buffalo Bills rush defense has not been great this year. And then I also think that DeAndre Swift in this matchup against Arizona is viable in both cash games and tournaments. We didn't see the targets last week against this Washington defense, but still ran the ball really well, and you can see in 4 straight weeks now, he's hit 20 plus DraftKings points. So I do think he's cash game viable, and again, like him in tournaments too. Now, diving into the wide receivers here, and being that I do prefer to spend up at the running back position early in the week, we're going to need to find some value here at the wide receiver position, but as always, we'll start at the top, and I'm looking at 7K and above. Handful of guys here where there's a case to be made to play them. For starters, we could stack up Nacua and or Kupp with Matthew Stafford in our tournament lineups this week. Tyreek Hill is always in play for tournaments. Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, all those guys look good as well. But CeeDee Lamb, even though he's the most expensive wide receiver this week, I think he's in play in both cash games and tournaments. 14 and 17 targets now in each of his last 2 games, and the Cowboys and Dak need to keep forcing the ball his way, and especially in a matchup like this where that secondary for Atlanta has not been great so far this year. Scrolling down here into the 6K range, I do want to highlight Devontae Smith very quickly. Again, we can stack him up with Jalen Hurts in a beautiful matchup at home against that Jags secondary, which is arguably the worst in the NFL this year. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I really do like Josh Allen this week against Miami, largely due to the stacking pieces here on the wide receiver side of things. We got Khalil Shakir there, we got Amari Cooper, and I also want to talk about Keon Coleman. $5,400 has now seen 7 targets in back-to-back games, 70 and 125 receiving yards, scored a touchdown last week. This kid looks legit, and at $5,400, very viable if I'm shooting for 4 or 5x value in my tournament lineups. I think he can get us there. I think his role's only going to increase as the season goes on. But again, if we look at any one of those wide receivers for the Bills there, let's go back up here to Shakir, $5,900, $5,800, and $5,400. All those are very affordable to pair with Josh Allen. Now let's get into some of that value that I was referring to earlier. Just below Keon Coleman here, we got Jacoby Myers, who's now seen 9, 10, 9, and 7 targets in his last 4 games. The #1 wide receiver in this Vegas offense. You could argue he's the #2 pass catcher behind Brock Bowers, but again, I'm searching for volume and opportunity in my cash game lineups, and at $5,300 there, those are some really nice numbers in my opinion. So I don't want to say he's for sure a cash game play, but I'm definitely leaning towards that, and I think he's viable in tournaments as well. But let's get into some more of the value that I like here in the 4K range, and that is going to be Cedric Tillman. 12 and 9 targets with Jameis Winston under center, 28.9 and 18.1 DraftKings points. Yes, his price has now gone up $1,000 from last week, but at $4,300, I absolutely think he's still in play. Next, we got the tight ends here, and I'm not seeing a lot of value stick out to me here early in the week. Let's start at the top here, and I do think Sam Laporta is interesting at $4,800. Kyle Pitts has been great now in a handful of weeks. Let's just pull open his game log here. 15, 10, 13.5, and 25 DraftKings points. The Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins were not lying when they said they want to get him more involved, and he's been living up to the hype so far this year. So $4,900, price is going up for sure, but tournament viable in my opinion. Talked about Ferguson earlier, we can stack him up in that game too. Njoku looked nice last week with Jameis Winston, 7 targets last week, scored another touchdown. Trey McBride I think is really interesting in tournaments, 11 targets last week. We know the volume's going to be there for him, and that Chicago defense, if there's one area they're susceptible to being beat, it's usually the tight end position, and then there's Brock Bowers there. But I want to scroll down here in the low 4K range. Mark Andrews is finally playing like Mark Andrews. You can see they're scored a touchdown in 3 straight games now, 15, 14, and 20 DraftKings points. Considering the price at $4,200, I do think he's going to be cash game viable, but again, I'm looking down here in the 3K range, and there's a handful of guys that we could talk about, but I'm kind of just hoping that one of these guys opens up as the value play later on in the week. And then wrapping up the positional plays here with the defenses, not really in love with the options we have here early in the week. The first one that really stuck out to me were the Cleveland Browns here at home against the Chargers. Don't necessarily love it, but I don't hate it either. And then the Arizona Cardinals here at $2,600, taking on a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. Again, don't necessarily love it, but for 2K defenses, those were the ones that stuck out to me. Alright everyone, now let's put together a first look cash lineup here, but just want to remind everyone I am running that free Discord channel as well. We have over 800 people in there talking multiple different sports for DFS, as well as some of their favorite sports bets. If you want to join that, there's a link to do so in the description below, as well as in the pinned comment below. But let's put together this first look cash lineup here. We're going to start at the quarterback position, and let's save some money here with Jameis Winston right off the bat at $5,400. Now, I mentioned earlier I do want to spend up at the running back position here this week, so let's put in Alvin Kamara. Let's put in Devon Achane. And you know what? Let's put another running back in here to start as well, and we'll go with DeAndre Swift. So 3 running back build here for this cash lineup. Now we're going to have to save some money at the wide receiver position. I know we can do that here with Jacoby Myers. Like I said, I'm not sold on him being a cash game play quite yet, but early in the week, he does look nice at that price. And then we'll scroll down here to Cedric Tillman as well. All right, $4,700 left over per player. Let's put in Mark Andrews there. Like I said, I didn't love the value here at the tight end position, but maybe that will open up as the week progresses. We'll put him in there, and then let's put in a defense. We'll go with... Let's go with the Browns here for starters. All right, 7K at the wide receiver position. That's better than I expected. We could go Devontae Smith, but I like that better in tournaments. Honestly, I didn't talk about Drake London. I know he had a dud last week, but I'm not going to let one game influence my decision-making because prior to that, basically got double-digit targets every week, was hitting 18-plus DraftKings points every week. So let's put him in there as the final play, and then we could upgrade the defense if we wanted to. Maybe we'll put the Eagles here against the Jags. All right, now let's put together a first-look tournament lineup. I talked about that Buffalo Bills wide receiver core quite a bit here today, so let's put in Josh Allen with 2 pass catchers. Let's go with Amari Cooper. He's $5,800, I believe. And then let's go Keon Coleman at $54. And then let's run it back there with Devon Achane at $6,700. I also want to do a mini stack here in this game between the Cowboys and Falcons. Talked about that quite a bit. So let's put in Jake Ferguson here at the tight end position. And let's do another tight end. Let's go with Pitts there. Put him in the flex. And then I also want to put in, let's go Bijan. So let's just assume Atlanta scores 4 touchdowns in this game. Kind of goes through Pitts and Bijan. You get a little mini game stack there between Dallas and Atlanta. Now let's put in a defense here. We'll go with the Cards. They were the cheapest defense that I highlighted. $4,400 left over at the wide receiver position. That's Cedric Tillman, right? Yeah, $4,300. For a first look tournament lineup, I don't mind that. Alright everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that.